Welcome to the ATP Project. You're with your hosts Matt, Steve and Jeff. G'day guys.
G'day.
Today we're talking about diuretics. Actually, the second time we've recorded this. What happened to the first one? It got corrupted.
Brooko deleted it because she sucks.
Oh, that's nice. As long as we're not recording, it'll be fine to say that, Matt.
The other thing, we've got a really great listener email about one of the topics that we had with regards to the vaccines, which is fantastic, really well written, which I think we're going to clear up some information there as well too. So anyway, guys, and then I've got an interesting little story about what's happened to me over the last week, which has been a bit painful. But let's get into the diuretic stuff first, because that's what people have come for.
All right.
Absolutely.
So cool. So what we're talking about diuretics, so we're talking about fluid retention and puffiness and all that sort of stuff. So there's lots of different reasons that people use diuretics. So we've got to acknowledge that some people choose to use diuretics to improve their body composition or the definition of their muscles, basically make themselves look better by removing some fluid for a bodybuilding comp or a photo shoot or something like that. So we'll talk about that. A lot of stuff about bodybuilders and that, because we do a lot with that. There's also a lot of people that are prescribed diuretics because they have blood pressure problems because of kidney disorders and that sort of stuff. So we will acknowledge that there are times and places for diuretics that need to be used as instructed, you know. And there's other times where people may abuse diuretics. We want to talk about the side effects and the natural alternatives and other ways of controlling your body shape without necessarily creating a toxic environment inside your body. And then what we also want to talk about is the reasons why people use diuretics. And some used to use it to mask other drugs and all that sort of stuff.
Enhancing drugs. It's funny when you always looked at using diuretics as a form of weight loss. To me, it always just seemed a bit stupid. I mean, you're just simply going to be dropping water weight. So, if you dehydrate yourself, you might be able to drop, 3, 4, 5 kilos, depending on how much water, you have to spare. Some people might be holding extra water, which obviously can then make you look puffy and more fat than what you are.
For a fighter and a weightlifter. So,
that's totally
when we're
different.
looking at a weigh-in, if someone's got, you've got
to make weight.
Yeah, they got to make weight. Some people can hold 5, 6, 7 kilos of water weight that we can reduce for them to hit the target, the weigh-in target, and then we can put that water back on. So we can take that water off and put it back on. When we're looking at using diuretics for weight loss, as a part of the fat loss campaign, for example, if you're going to see your coach for skin folds, if you're going to go to your Weight Watchers weekly weigh-in to watch your weight, then those sort of things is it's a joke. You're not removing fat, you're just reducing numbers on the scales, and that'll come straight back on. But if you're a fighter that needs to meet a particular weight, and you need to be under 70 kilo category, and we can take off 7 kilos of water weight and put on 10 kilos of back on all within 24 hours, and you're fighting at 80 something kilos against someone that's 70 kilos, that's when we use the diuretics as part of that. And also weightlifters and other power lifters, people that have to hit a particular weight and then they get a particular time before they get to compete, we can take away a lot of water so they can hit their weight that they need, and then we can put that water back with nutrients and they can perform better.
Well, obviously when Jake was one of the athletes that we were working with, great fighter, fighting in the UFC. We did that quite a lot, Matt. He had quite a lot of weight that he had
until
to
they changed the rules.
That's right. They made it really bad.
What they did. So they changed the rules badly in the sense that they still allowed people to almost kill themselves for a weigh-in. But what UFC did is they banned the rehydration. So they banned IV rehydration. Oh. So they only allow oral rehydration. And the problem with that is we could not get that weight back on. So these blokes would take a few days to deplete themselves. We would need to get that water back into them within 10, 12 hours. And that way we can, usually within about 24 hours, we can put 10 kilos of weight back on.
What was the thought behind banning the UV, man?
No, the performance enhancing. So
the
IV.
UV. The IV.
Yeah. So performance enhancing is part of their performance enhancing drugs. They're just trying to ban that. They basically looked at that. Maybe they looked at it as a safety thing, saying people won't kill themselves to get dehydrated if they can't IV rehydrate. But they didn't change. No. If they wanted to do that, the weigh-in would be 2 hours before the fight.
I was just about to say.
They wouldn't give them 24 hours after the weigh-in to reload. They would basically say you weigh in and you fight. And that way people would actually be weighing in at their fighting weight.
Exactly.
That's what they do in judo and other things. It's just UFCs have allowed.
The only problem is if you don't make the weight, then the fight's off and you've lost all the ticket sales. That's what I'm thinking.
Steve, you took the words out of my mouth.
You want to know something else?
Opportunity to then further make the weight. But how are they going to make that weight, Steve?
Diuretics.
So therefore, do they really care?
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, when the show must go on. Yeah. So what needs to happen is there needs to be maybe some kind of penalty, or the other fighter gets to say, well, I don't know, maybe there's
one punch in the face, maybe. What do you reckon? Start a fight.
One arm tied behind the back.
Yeah, start behind a fight. Yeah, fight still goes. Makes it more interesting.
You want to know how they know if a fighter's used IV?
How?
Guess. I don't guess. We'll be here for days.
Do they look for puncture marks?
Yeah.
No, that's what I knew you'd say. That's why I said guess. Yeah. I really hoped you said that. Yeah. They look for plastic in the urine.
Oh, yeah.
So the actual IV bags are made of plastic. And so the tubes are plastic, and there's that much plastic comes into the IV fluid that they can measure the plastic in the urine to tell you if you've used IV rehydration.
You've got to remember that
IV... If you use a glass bottle and you use a... Oh, shh.
Well, IVs are used in hospitals for very good reasons. If someone's been in an accident and they've lost a lot of blood, you need to rehydrate.
Yeah. I can talk firsthand about that, Steve. We'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah, that's right. But diuretics are used in hospitals too, as you said. They're Lasix for if you got lots of fluid in the lungs, and spirulactone's a great antihypertensive drug to get rid of fluid out of your body, and it spares potassium. It's called a potassium sparing diuretic. And then you've got other ones like Diazide, which just depletes minerals, and all the water follows it. So that's quite dangerous, because if you take that and you're just losing sodium, potassium, magnesium out of your body, you're in trouble, because if you take too much of it, and bodybuilders aren't
the smartest group, Steve?
No.
Steve lives down on the Gold Coast. Wow.
I was going to say aren't medically monitored, but you guys said smart. That's you're seeing Mick. When are you seeing Mick next?
Oh, don't worry about Mick.
Yeah, don't worry about
These
Mick.
guys are the smartest group. Actually, the funny thing is,
they are actually.
The funny,
because they
to be honest,
they are.
The bodybuilding group, because they are a lot of the time self-medicating, a lot of the time they are taking control of their own health, a lot of the time they are researching this stuff, and not only that, they are trialling this stuff on themselves and their little communities and groups. And to be perfectly honest, when we started ATP, I learnt so much from bodybuilders because I used to like the best guinea pigs. Like I said, they were harder to kill and easier to replace than a racehorse. And then, but the funny thing is they give really good feedback, and they actually document stuff. They know their body. Like in the naturopath clinic, for example, it used to really spin me out. These people come in, they think they're dying. You give them a prescription and a protocol. They come back 2 weeks later and say, how do you feel? And they go, not much better. And I go, no, they're saying, no different really. And I say, okay, well, let's have a look at your file. So you had headaches every day previously. You used to wake up every morning with all this pain, getting cramps at night. Oh, no, all that's gone.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's all gone. And I said, yeah. And then you go through it and they go, oh, yeah, you're right. No, all that's gone. Yeah, actually, I guess I do feel different,
It's funny, yeah.
But bodybuilders would come through and say, I noticed this change, I know this weight, my weight changed to here,
by
my
350
skin folds.
grams.
Yeah, and they can give you the best data and the best feedback. But not only that, they will teach. I learn more about pharmaceuticals and that sort of stuff from bodybuilders than I will from reading a textbook.
Did I tell you my stupid saying when I first started working here? I saw all these bodybuilders and they're all taking clenbuterol, and I'm going, isn't that great that bodybuilders, even with severe asthma, they're taking... are fighting through this to become... I didn't know they were taking it for weight loss. I've only known the proper use of drugs. I don't know the weird off-label use. And I said the Elsa, and she was
easy
laughing
to shake up their protein powder.
Yeah. I went, oh, okay. Oh, gee, good on them for having this bad asthma or whatever. They've lung disorders.
So they're all used... So a lot of people in the sports world use different form of pharmaceutical diuretics. Do you want to tell us a little bit about... Let's talk a little bit about fluid retention. We'll talk about how the pharmaceutical diuretics work, the side effects and that sort of stuff.
Sure.
I've got a whole heap of natural stuff that I've been using for years that I want to teach people about as well. But the real basis of fluid retention, in regards to, because a lot of people talk about kidney cardiovascular, so that's the main type of fluid that a lot of the diuretics are designed for.
Correct, yeah.
Is what we call vascular fluid, or the fluid associated with the blood. So typically, if you can imagine, we have all these defense mechanisms throughout our body. So if a signal at some stage sends a message to your body saying, hey, we don't have any blood in this area, or we've got no oxygen coming to this area, there's a lot of different causes for that. One of those might be that your leg's been bitten off or that you're bleeding to death. And so what happens is, if parts of your body aren't getting any blood, an assumption is made that you're possibly bleeding to death. What do we do when we're bleeding? We do vasoconstriction. So let's quickly tighten up the arteries to make sure that less blood falls out. And let's replace or increase our blood volume with more salt and more water to dilute or spread out what blood we've got left so we don't die.
And clot.
Yeah, and we stimulate clotting processes. So basically, part of lack of oxygen into your body, which could come from so many different causes, the response to that is holding salt, holding fluid, and constricting your blood vessels, and encouraging clotting. And that's what creates a lot of what we call vascular fluid. And then what happens? You get all this too much water into your blood. It leaks out of your blood vessels and pools in the peripheral limbs, so it pools in areas like ankles and hands and feet and lower legs and all that sort of stuff as the water falls out, and then it requires your lymphatics and your veins and everything to take it all away. And then what it is, ultimately it's your kidneys then that are responsible for removing that water. And the way they remove the water is they throw the salt back into the urine, and then all the water rushes in to match up with the salt. Yeah, and the way the body holds water is it holds salt into your body, and then all the water stays in with that salt.
Yeah.
So that's the basis of around how the kidneys are controlling your fluid retention. Okay. What crazy things happen is if your kidneys, for example, if you get little hardening in the arteries, or if you get a lot of vasoconstriction, you get a lot of inflammation and oxidative stress, the tiny microcapillaries running through your kidneys, if they calcify and harden up, then your kidneys basically think you're bleeding to death constantly, and they're constantly sending a message. And that's often what happens with cardiovascular disease. So people with cardiovascular disease, they've got these hardening in the arteries. So there's sections of the body saying, I can't get oxygen through this section. So there's that part of a body sending a message saying, hey, we're possibly bleeding to death. Maybe increase the blood pressure, vasoconstrict, add some water, and that way we'll get more oxygen to this area. So people with cardiovascular disease and kidney disease, like diabetics that have had kidney damage and that sort of stuff, they get stuck on these diuretics because their kidneys are doing a weird thing in response to lack of oxygen and that sort of stuff. So in those cases, they're prescribed pharmaceutical diuretic to encourage the kidney to remove that sodium and take all the water with them. And that's typically, the reason why I'm telling you so much about that is one form of fluid that revolves around heart disease, blood vessels, kidney damage. But the drugs that they've made for those is what the athletes are abusing.
Yeah, that's right.
So tell us a little bit about how they work, if you want, Steve-O, and that.
All right, well, the first ones, the early ones are like diazide. It's been around about 50 years, and that's a drug that just tells the kidneys to, let more minerals out of your body, all of them, potassium, sodium, and everything. So via osmosis, as you correctly pointed out, the water follows it. So you just peel your water out. And that's all great until someone realised about 40 years ago that we really need potassium inside our cells. So they came up with these things called potassium-sparing diuretics, which get rid of the other minerals to keep potassium. Spirulactone's a classic one for that, and that's used for hyperandrogenic women as well, because one of the side effects of that one is it reduces testosterone. So even though it's a little bit safer, they use the other one because the other one doesn't suppress testosterone.
Say them again, sorry.
Spirulactone suppresses testosterone.
Yep.
And diazide doesn't suppress testosterone. So they use diazide, but it's a vastly more dangerous diuretic.
Okay, and what does that do with potassium, the diazide?
Gets rid of it, depletes it, and magnesium and everything, all the goodies are gone. And then you got Lasix, which are a more, I'll say more powerful, because they're used for congestive heart failure. If your right ventricle, if your heart doesn't work and you can't pump your blood through your lungs well enough, like that's what the right ventricle does, then you get fluid on the lungs, and that's how you die of congestive heart failure. And so they give you Lasix to prolong your life, basically. And unfortunately, usually these things, you just go more and more Lasix until they've run out, and then you die. Yeah. But it's a drug that gets rid of fluid, particularly off the lungs.
So when you're athletes, we talk to the athletes all the time. The goal is to actually take the water away from between the skin and the muscle, because we want the muscle to look big. But also, even the fighters, we want the fuel within the muscle. We need lots of fuel inside the muscle. We just don't want a heap of extracellular water. These guys that are using the diuretics are typically trying to remove extracellular water so that their muscles look more defined. You got to understand, if you're using a diuretic that's stripping out magnesium and potassium in the process, potassium and magnesium are your main intracellular ions. They're the things that hold water inside your cells, along with sugar, pretty much. It's sugar and electrolytes are holding the salt and the sugar inside your muscles is what's holding the water there. Right. If you're depleting out the potassium and magnesium at the same rate as the sodium, then your muscles will flatten out, and that's when you've got to stop the diuretics. But what most of the time happens is you've got to have some water still in your body, and if you deplete your intracellular salts, by default, sodium and calcium extracellularly, they rarely run out. I mean, sodium you can, but calcium will always come from bones and teeth. So the depletion of the potassium, magnesium intracellularly results in them looking like they got fluid retention still, and they take a higher dose. And then they cut water out. They take a higher dose. That triggers a stress response because the body still thinks you're bleeding to death. And part of that stress response is releasing cortisol, which will hold visceral fluid, so fluid around your internal organs to give you a big round belly. So you take too many diuretics, you flatten out your muscle and you get a round gut because of the stress reaction and the depletion of the magnesium and potassium.
Yeah, it's very dangerous.
So the potassium-sparing diuretics are basically a diuretic that doesn't strip the potassium out. The side effects in the real world for that is most people that are on those are the elderly, and the elderly then freak out because they're told to avoid potassium because they're on a drug that preserves potassium in their body. Guess where potassium comes from? I don't guess. I'm playing a guessing game today.
Pretty much everywhere.
Well, pretty much everywhere.
All your fruits and vegetables.
So they avoid eating fruit and vegetables?
They avoid fruit and veg because they're freaking out. So they just live on breads and cereals and stuff like that because they're not sure what their levels of potassium they can tolerate are. And then if you have a look at athletes and that sort of stuff using a potassium-sparing diuretic, that will not really acknowledge the fact that they're going to overdose on potassium, and they'll just go through and continue to eat those things and give themselves a high risk of an imbalance between their electrolytes.
It's called hyperkalemia.
Yeah.
And one of the problems with athletes, if they go on, say, spirulactone, it suppresses testosterone, so you get the less growth that way. But also these athletes are typically on like the chickpea. So they eat a lot of broccoli. That's high in potassium, and chicken's actually quite high in potassium as well.
Yep.
So they're overloading on potassium, and the kidneys want to excrete the excess, but they can't because they're on a diuretic that stops the secretion of potassium.
And then when you get imbalance between your magnesium, sodium, calcium, potassium, you get all sorts of electrical problems. You can't control your calcium, magnesium channels.
Terrible cramps.
Yeah, you get everything from cramps and weird spastic sort of...
To your heart stopping is the other one.
Yeah, the heart will stop.
That's not really...
That's extreme.
Well, like one of the old poisons that the spies and that would use was potassium chloride. Remember they used to potassium chloride would induce a heart attack. You get enough of that in and then it kind of fizzes away. Yeah. Doesn't always show up on the test.
Wow.
Just so you know, in case you want to
it's a little bit scary because there are drugs that are prescribed to people that have really bad nourishment, and you get a condition where you can be prescribed huge amounts of potassium, half a gram in a tablet. So you take a few of those, and all of a sudden you're getting grams of calcium, of potassium. Yeah. It's quite dangerous.
And we really need to make sure the magnesium.
It's called slow K is the drug. Yeah.
So, and then if you have a look just quickly while we're talking about those, while we're talking about the sodium-based depleters. So these things are all working in the kidneys to strip sodium out. Naturally, we've got things like dandelion is famous for that. That's how dandelion leaf, not dandelion root, works by making bile flow in the liver. Dandelion leaf helps the kidney flow water. It's kind of cool, huh?
It's cool.
But when you have a look at the dandelion leaf, naturally, it contains mega doses of potassium.
Yeah.
So what's funny about it is in nature, a lot of the diuretics that strip out sodium also contain lots of potassium. So dandelion leaf, nettle leaf. So nettle root works totally different. It works on all the hormones. Nettle leaf is a diuretic. Yeah. So nettle leaf, dandelion leaf, both excellent sources of potassium and strip out the sodium. So they actually naturally are potassium-sparing, sodium-depleting diuretics.
Yeah, if they've got high amounts of caffeic acid and cholinergic acid, which are great diuretics naturally found. Now, you mentioned dandelion leaf. You can get a bag of it at Woolies. You know what I mean? This is how safe it is. You eat it as a salad.
It's more bitter than my ex-girlfriend.
It's
bloody... it's horrible.
It is.
And so was she.
Can you blame her? She went out with you.
And she didn't get the prize at the end.
No, the ring, mate.
Fucking space.
By the way, who's wearing their wedding ring today, guys? I'm married. Look, see?
Yeah.
Look at that.
No,
if you're heart disease, Steve.
Yeah, we refer
month
back to
and
a
still going
podcast
strong.
of a 15% increase in heart disease, Steve. You need to cut a 1 mil groove in that ring to stop your acupuncture
Beckett
channel.
love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. God, you seen her ring? It's going to kill
Yes,
her.
I have.
No, well, I asked if I could come on the honeymoon. You said no.
She said she was
all
still
about
getting married
us.
to you
She
anyway.
listens to this.
Hey.
Well, you're disgusting, Steve. I'm going to say, actually, I've got a few other things disgusting things that you've said that I'm going to bring up later then, knowing that she listens to it. For example, I predict her cortisol levels are quite high in the evening. But anyway, we'll get back to that later.
Yeah, we get that.
While we're talking about diuretics.
Yes,
So-
please. Phew.
So,
There's another drug diuretic.
Tell me.
Angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitor.
the ACE inhibitor. Yeah.
ACE inhibitor, yeah, sorry. That's an antihypertensive drug that works as a diuretic as well.
Yep.
So that's the other one. And angiotensin, do you want me to go through all that?
Yeah, let's go through it.
All right.
And let's see if we
Angiotensin.
understand it.
All right. Well, angiotensin comes out of the liver. It's made and then it's converted into angiotensin converting enzyme 1 and then angiotensin 2.
And ACE does that conversion.
Angiotensin converting enzyme does that conversion.
I
That
got a
comes from the
diagram in front of me.
that comes from
I was
the
going to
kidneys.
say, easy for Matt to say he's got a diagram.
Oh, it comes from the. Let me guess. The liver. No, it doesn't. It comes from the. It comes from the
Surface of the
kidneys
pulmonary
and
renal
the lungs.
endothelium.
Yeah, it comes from the kidneys and lungs that regulate fluid. Yeah, you're. Oh, jeez, I should have been right. And if
It is
you
actually yours. I stole yours.
Oh, that's right. And that actual angiotensin 2 does all sorts of things with regards to fluids. It's quite a nasty one. It increases high blood pressure, increases sympathetic activity. It
Which does
increases
the vasoconstriction.
Yep, does vasoconstriction.
I'll run through because I got your list.
Oh, okay.
So we got the I stole your list.
Yeah, that's right.
So the angiotensin 2. So let's start again because
Yeah.
you've missed so much. You've ballsed it
all right,
all
I'll
up,
start from
Steve.
the
It's
top.
as if someone stole your diagram just before you
It
started.
increases sympathetic activity, so adrenal.
Let me take over this
Okay,
scenario.
go for it, mate.
I will talk you through your diagram.
Okay.
No. So the liver releases angiotensinogen.
Yep.
The renin. So you know when they talk about renin-angiotensin system? The renin makes the liver angiotensinogen turn to angiotensin 1.
Yep.
I can never say these words. I realise I was halfway
Angiotensin.
through saying
I was
a
going
word
to
and
say,
I
well,
can't
that's
pronounce it.
actually pretty impressive.
The ACE then converts the 1 to the 2.
Yep. And what's ACE?
ACE is the... Oh, shit. It's not in the diagram. You set me up.
Angiotensin converting enzyme.
He's already said it.
Pretty
I was
self-explanatory.
going to say Jeff.
Yeah.
He calls himself ACE.
No, you might not
Finally
hear
got it.
anybody call me that for months.
Years even.
You won't hear you call ACE for the next month or so, will we?
No.
We could talk about that
We'll
later.
get that in a minute.
Anyway, so angiotensin
By the way,
2.
Beck calls me Ace.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Anyway, it makes his password make sense now, hey?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Anyway, so angiotensin 2 does the sympathetic activity, which basically tells your body, holy shit, we're possibly bleeding to death. I'm freaking out. Let's constrict the blood vessels, trigger adrenaline, do all that sort of stuff you do if you've just been shot.
Adrenaline constricts the blood vessels, and they use it in local anaesthetics a lot for your teeth. You know, when you do your teeth, they give a bit of adrenaline in with the anaesthetic to stop the bleeding when you're doing your teeth. So that the adrenaline constricts the blood vessels, stops bleeding.
Makes
So anyway,
sense now why they have to put a lot of vasodilators in the high stim pre-workouts, huh?
Yeah, of course.
Because the high stims constrict because vasoconstriction. So you need to add a vasodilator to end up somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
The other next thing that happens is you get the sodium holding on in the kidneys, and then all the water goes with it. And the combination of the vasoconstriction and the holding the water will put your blood pressure up. That's how stress can put your blood pressure up through this pathway. The angiotensin 2 then tells your adrenal gland to release aldosterone. And we're going to talk a little bit more about aldosterone because a lot of other herbs work that way by controlling aldosterone. And aldosterone will ask the body to hold on to more sodium and potassium, and it works like another thing that'll hold on to the water. So you get the increase in the blood pressure and all that sort of stuff. Then what's going to happen then? Your body's going to try to calcify the artery so things don't leak out. And then the last thing that happens is you get this pituitary gland blocks this thing called antidiuretic hormone. Increases antidiuretic hormone. So we get antidiuretic hormone saying stop peeing, hold on to water, and all those things is what causes fluid retention.
You know, when you have a few beers, antidiuretic hormone levels drop dramatically, and that's why you pee more. It's very dehydrating.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you have a look in nature, the opposite to that. So that's the thing that creates the fluid retention. There is a thing that kind of happens the opposite to that. Okay, the atrial natriuretic peptide.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't know
it.
how to say it.
That's
ANP.
it.
We always call it ANP.
Yeah.
So what happens is, so we've got this renin-angiotensin system and aldosterone that all comes out as part of stress, comes from the liver and the kidneys, telling your body to hold on, and comes out of the adrenals and everything, tells the body to hold on to water just in case whatever this stress is means you're bleeding to death. That's the whole reason why it's happening. Then we get this other one that goes through and says, bugger that. slow down your drinking. You're not craving salt at all. Get rid of that salt cravings. Get rid of that blood pressure through vasodilation. So you get this other thing called ANP that does vasodilation, switches off the vasoconstriction, increases your ability to wee, gets that salt pumping out, does everything the opposite to that to help your body pump out the fluid. All again via the sodium. And that's how a lot of the herbs actually work. So instead of the herbs going through blocking this stuff, a lot of them are actually stimulating this ANP. And if you're a bodybuilder or an athlete and you know that there's, rather than blocking all of it, it's really hard sometimes, naturally in particular, to block a defense mechanism that your body uses that it thinks it's using to keep you alive.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we override these things, you know. Yet if you ask the body to induce a different response, if you say to the body, that is not our priority, this is our priority, you can get better results. This is why I love herbs, because herbs will actually stimulate this. So the herbs that stimulate ANP is Terminalia, Juna. So the Ayurvedic herb they call Ajuna.
Is that juniper root?
Arjuna. No, juniper berries is a different one again. It works on sodium and urate, so I'll talk about that in a sec.
Yeah.
No, this is Terminalia Arjuna. It's actually an old Ayurvedic remedy for the heart. So it's used for congestive heart disease. It's used for that. And the combination of ingredient compounds in this particular herb are phenomenal, because it even contains such things as quercetin and luteolin, which are bioflavonoids that improve the integrity of your capillaries, so they stop releasing fluid into the lungs, so they stop releasing fluid into your out of your blood vessels and everything, and stop plasma leakage and everything. At the same time, it's got the other components that stimulate ANP.
It's ANP too.
AN, yeah.
Natrium.
That's something to sodium.
Well, it's Latin for sodium.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah, if you ever seen the chemical formulas for sodium, it's Na.
Na, yeah.
You ever wonder why? Now you know.
There you go.
See all this useless information I can come up with any time.
Yeah, it's bloody brilliant.
You got plenty of it.
Totally
Steve.
useless.
So basically, if you use something like Terminalia, it will actually induce a whole heap of responses that tell your body to dilate your blood vessels and pump the fluid out of your body and get rid of your fluid retention. It actually asks your body to do the opposite, not blocks the fluid retention pathways.
Right.
So we've got dandelion leaf and nettle leaf drive the sodium, very similar to the drugs. They work on stimulating the release of sodium and that sort of stuff, and replenish the potassium because they naturally contain it. Terminalia, or Arjuna, I should call it Arjuna. Arjuna drives this other compound that tells your body just to strip out that fluid and vasodilate. That's the holy grail for the bodybuilders. That's the one that those guys really want to be using. Now, remember there's an old Chinese formula, ginseng and astragalus.
Oh, yeah.
It's been around for a long time.
Good for everything.
It's one of those ones in Chinese medicine, they say it's good for upright qi. Okay?
Yes.
So in Chinese medicine, it's a spleen tonic. And in Chinese medicine, spleen regulates your lymphatics, it regulates your fluid movement in your body, it regulates your upright qi, which means your ability to stand tall, be confident, self-worth, pride, vitality, that sort of stuff. But more importantly, it stops everything falling down and out. For example, bloating, abdominal distension, fullness, digestive things. Ginseng and astragalus we always used for that. Ginseng and astragalus has got a great reputation for helping generalize fluid retention, lymphatic congestion, and all these sorts of things. The new research on ginseng and astragalus shows that it can actually work by making your body more sensitive to ANP. One of the ways that it actually works in the kidney and helps the kidney to remove fluid retention is by making your body more sensitive to ANP. So you could use Arjuna to drive ANP production and secretion. You stack it with things like astragalus. In particular, it was the astragalus component of the ginseng astragalus that primed the receptors to make you more sensitive to it.
That.
At the same time, if you stacked it with something like Rosella, which is the hibiscus flowers, Rosella is really, really cool. The mechanism of action for the fluid, it's all over the shop, because what they found, it's a very good vasodilator. It helps to strip out, it actually acts like ANP. I couldn't find any research to show it directly stimulates ANP or whatever, but it has all the same functions. There's all this research showing when you do Rosella, it removes the fluid, vasodilation, does all these amazing things, exactly like ANP does. So fair chance we'll probably find a paper soon that does it. But it basically, Rosella will inhibit that whole renin-angiotensin system. It actually works as an ACE inhibitor as well, so it stops that whole conversion pathway.
Yes.
And it actually increases ANP activity and primes you up for your ANP function. So using things like Arjuna, rosella will all help with that sodium, and then something like astragalus in it, they all help to remove that sodium and get rid of that fluid retention, which will be one form of your fluid retention. So once you're doing that well, and you notice your muscles starting to flatten out and all that sort of stuff, you've probably removed as much sodium as you bloody well can remove without making yourself sick. That's when you start looking at other possible things that are causing fluid retention. Now, remember the sodium fluid retention, it's generalized puffiness, but typically it falls into the ends. So you get puffy hands, puffy feet, cankles, cankles and...
Elephantitis.
Yeah, that sort of stuff. Elephantitis and that things.
That's a real thing.
That's a thing.
Yeah.
You're looking a bit strange.
No, people have often accused me when they see me in the change rooms. They're like, that's not natural.
Yeah, I thought you were referring to your calves and cankles things.
No, a little bit higher up.
Huh? A little bit higher up.
Part man, part elephant.
What are you talking about?
I know what he's talking about. I've got to comment on it.
Anyway, go
Explain, Steve. What the hell was it? Oh, yeah. So the other fluids.
But that's not where an elephant has its trunk.
That's right.
Yeah. My tail's at the front, not at the back. Anyway, keep going.
Keep going, Matt. Push through.
Anyway, so let's have a look at the other forms of waste. Salicylates is really common.
Right.
Salicylic acid. If you get too much salicylic acid, salicylate compounds building up in your body, which are aspirin-like compound, found in a lot of herbs and spices, they will cause a puffiness, a generalized puffiness, a lot around the face. They make your face really puffy. They also can make you really itchy after a hot shower. You get like irritated around the mouth and that sort of stuff, like rashy and that sort of stuff. You can get bad behavior. You get a lot of heartburn, indigestion, ringing in the ears. They're all signs that you build up too many salicylates, and they'll cause this weird-ass puffiness, just generalized in weird spots. The way we strip that out is we go to a low salicylate diet. Don't stop taking your herbs. So a lot of people will read, they go to the salicylate list and they go, it's all bloody herbs. And then they go and have a look at their tablets they've taken and they go, oh, they're all full of herbs. We're going to stop them. If someone's prescribed you to take those vitamins, or if you're using the ATP products which are full of herbs, have a look at the low salicylate diet. Look at your diet, because when you're eating a plate of something, it's a hell of a lot more of a salicylate load in a bowl of salad than you're going to get into a capsule, even though they've got the same words and that sort of stuff. So what you want to do is go through and try to eliminate or switch out high salicylate foods for low salicylate foods, so you can still take all your supplements and not screw around with your protocols.
On the website, if you jump
and take hypoglycine.
Yeah. On our website, we've actually done a podcast on salicylates. I can't remember which one it is, but if you go up onto our website, there's a little search function there. Just type in salicylates, and you can listen to the podcast. But then, Matt, I think you've got eating plans, foods to avoid, and things that can obviously help you. So, yeah.
Oh, and it can be the weirdest things, like discarding the outer leaves, peeling your stuff, and just boiling the buggery out of it. You know,
all the good stuff.
Yeah, all the good stuff. Get rid of the good, healthy things.
And any other puffiness? Like
oxalates?
Yep.
Oh, man, sorry, I stuffed your segue. Hang on, let's go back. Good.
So
I was just talking about salicylates.
Salicylates.
And just chilling out, my mates.
Are there any other things that make you puffy that you find in foods?
Master segue, what are you for? Oxalates, he says.
Oxalates.
Oh, sounds more like Yoda.
Yes. Oxalates, you'll say. No, yeah, right. Oxalates make you puffy. Now, oxalates are weird things. They come out of things like sweet potato, spinach, almonds, and things that we might eat a lot more of as part of a comp prep or as part of a weight cutting event. And all of a sudden, we might start getting joint problems. Again, it can create some itchiness, but typically you get sore, gritty eyes full of sand. You'll get basically frozen shoulder. You go and do an arm workout, and then your elbows seize up, and then it's just whatever you use. You just get these weird ass crystals that move around. In an extreme case, the doctor might say you've got poor kidney, you've got kidney disease and possibly kidney stones and that sort of stuff, which are oxalate stones, which a lot of athletes have. You'll spin out when you hear how many athletes have actually been told they've got kidney stones, and they don't think it's a big deal. But it's probably okay, but the problem is they got oxalates all through their body that are contributing to other problems. The way we get rid of oxalates is we actually use magnesium citrate before meals. So we take magnesium citrate before we eat those oxalate foods. The magnesium citrate binds to the oxalate, strips it out through the poo, and the stuff that does get absorbed, you can actually excrete it through the kidney before it forms a calcium oxalate stone, which you can't get through your kidney.
No, that's bad.
And the cool thing about that is you're also loading up on the intracellular salt magnesium, which will prevent the cramping and hold water inside your cells, which makes the outside look drier. Exactly. A lot of this is talking about holding water inside the cells and getting rid of the other crap. The last one that's really very common and really very common in bodybuilders and athletes, and that's uric acid. The reason why uric acid is so common is because things like caffeine and that sort of stuff can increase it. It comes from the breakdown of protein. Okay, so the more protein you eat adds to it, but also your body, when you're breaking down your muscle tissue, you're actually liberating a lot of this waste. And then your body's got to clear it away. Now, uric acid's a weird one because these urate crystals form particularly around your joints. Now, if you think about your joints, that's the origins and the insertions of all your muscles. That's where we're going to get all that awesome definition and all that separation. And if you can't get that fluid out of, around that shoulder and armpit, if you can't get that fluid out around the elbows and things like that, then you can't get proper looking muscles and arms. Everything looks fat.
Is that my problem?
Yeah. Yeah. And then in an extreme case, uric acid will cause urate kidney stones, or a lot of people have got gout. It spins about how many people have got gout. And that's all uric acid. So like I was saying before, you can deplete all your sodium, you cut your sodium, use those sodium things, but before you flatten out, before you've depleted all of the intracellular salts and dehydrated yourself and you look like shit and can't even make a proper muscle contraction, start looking at the other wastes like the salicylates with the glycine, the low salicylate diet. You do the oxalates with the magnesium citrate and maybe going to a low oxalate diet if you're susceptible to these things, which, trust me, it's like sweet potato, almonds, spinach. If I just say those three.
Everyone eats them.
Yeah, but bodybuilders and athletes in particular eat so much.
Really
as soon as someone tries to go, into a fat loss campaign, they just move from their white potatoes to sweet potatoes. We go from, fill yourselves up with leaves, and then move on to a couple of almonds a day,
It's scary.
And then with the urate holds around the joints and it creates really bad definition in your muscles. So if we can strip the urate out, actually, to be perfectly honest, that's probably the most important for an athlete or a bodybuilder, because you think about the lower back, those guys, a lot of the people that take the diuretics because they can't get that glutes and hemis and lower back in. I mean, usually that's it, the lower abs, lower back. Urate crystals sit in that lower back. Even the old Ayurvedic stuff I used to talk about, puffiness, fluid retention, stiffness and soreness in the lower back is just a indiscriminate, for no known cause, is often associated with urates, and the treatments was stripping it out with things like Rosella, your black cherry, so your sour cherry, they get rid of it, your juniper berries, get rid of it there, and celery seed.
Yeah. So, celery seed in particular is a classic.
So, seriously, if I was preparing for a comp, or if I wanted to prepare for a photo shoot, or if I was suffering from fluid retention, before I went with the heavy duty medication stuff, I'd be using a bit of dandelion leaf, I'd be using some nettle leaf, I'd definitely find some Arjuna, which you'll find in some Ayurvedic, like the old Triphala products and that sort of stuff. Yeah. Triphala is an old Ayurvedic remedy that's made up of, I'm pretty sure it's Arjuna in that. Oh, probably not now. I just realised what a wanker I am.
Someone will fact check you.
Yeah, it's cool because, terminalia, Arjuna is cool because in Ayurvedic medicine it was used for the downward flowing movement of all hollow organs, which is really kind of cool because if you think about that, the downward flowing movement of all hollow organs, you're talking about bowels, kidneys and all that sort of stuff, and bile and liver and getting all that sort of stuff flowing. Asparagus and that sort of stuff works really well with it. But so that's what I'd kind of do as a bit of a campaign. Rosella, definitely. So Rosella, celery seed, Arjuna, astragalus, sour cherry, black cherry stuff.
The other thing we have to acknowledge is a lot of fluid retention can be caused by drugs. Like the most common one is cortisone.
Oh, yeah.
And that causes massive, they call it moon face.
Puffiness, yeah.
And diseases like Cushing's.
But talk about what that... Well, yeah. So Cushing's...
Yeah.
Now, this is good. I'm glad you mentioned...
Glad I mentioned it.
I'm really glad you mentioned cortisol master segue. Because I'm going to burn you now.
Here we go.
No, what was it? Oh, I got so excited about burning, I forgot what I was going to say.
Cushing's. I mentioned Cushing's.
Oh, yeah. So Cushing syndrome is the body making too much of a hormone called cortisol. Now, cortisol is our stress hormone. It's associated with too much stimulants, too much caffeine, too much intensity in your life and whatever. You release too much bloody cortisol. And that holds fluid. And the extreme case of that is someone Cushing syndrome that looks like Bert Newton. They get that moon face and the big round body. Yeah. And then... other people take medication forms of cortisol, which is cortisone, prednisone. They get the same sort of side effects. So it's a good point you mentioned because that's stress and overconsumption of stimulants can do that. Let's move on to something else like your hate mail.
Yes.
My email.
Actually, you know what? This was good.
That's right.
We actually,
It's mine,
you know, one of the things that we always say is question everything, and it's really good to be able to get information back from people that are listening to the podcast where they might have a point or they want further clarification.
Especially
Steve.
experts.
So obviously, you being away, we couldn't actually address this last week, but now that you're back, Steve, it was on the podcast in relation to the flu vaccine.
Yeah, it was on. We did the flu vaccine about how to prevent the flu, and we got a comment, an email from a vaccine specialist. I don't know what her qualifications are, but vaccine specialist. So
No,
this
vaccine
is really
specialist is probably qualified.
Yeah, pretty
qualified.
Yeah, very qualified to actually give us feedback on our opinions.
So the great thing is she's done the email with 5 good points. The first one says thimerosal is not in the flu vaccine, which I found interesting.
Well, hang on. This is we need to clarify a little bit here as well too. And Steve, I think the presumption is that this is obviously for the world, because obviously we're in North America as well. But you were saying that it's not in Australia. So we're not copying out of that point. As far as you were concerned and the information that you had read, you believe that it was still in the vaccines within Australia.
Yeah, well, it's still in the vaccines, the one that I was talking about, which is Fluzone.
But this lady, I'm sorry, I don't know her name, but she was saying, no, according to her understanding of the vaccine schedule in Australia, that it has been removed.
It has been removed from the schedule, but this is not a non-scheduled vaccine. The flu vaccine is not a scheduled one as the childhood vaccines.
Okay.
And just on that point, there is still thimerosal in the hepatitis B vaccine, which is a scheduled vaccine.
This is just in Australia we're talking about now. Yep.
And also there is, unfortunately, mercury in another vaccine, which is, maybe I shouldn't read the name of it, but it was published in the literature in the diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis.
Steve? That's an older one, isn't
This was they got rid of thimerosal out of the kids' vaccines in 2001. 9 years later, they did a study to see whether there was mercury in them, and they found one of the vaccines still had mercury in it.
Right. Now,
can I just say something
I didn't
quickly?
mention about
I need to give some
vaccines.
perspective to everyone out there.
Yeah.
We are doing a podcast to everyone in the world. These companies are global multinational companies, okay? So what happens is each region has like a FDA or a TGA. Everyone's got different regulations for your region. So what happens is these large multinational companies are making vaccines all over the world. So when we talk about these vaccines, Steve-O talk about the exact product information from Fluzone. And the worldwide and the paper about that product, it's full of mercury, okay?
Yeah.
Thimerosal is one of the ingredients.
Thimerosal is one of the ingredients.
It's one of the main ingredients in this product.
Yeah,
but I went on to TGA.
Yeah.
I went onto the TGA webpage and downloaded the Australian product information for Fluzone. And in Australia, it doesn't have thimerosal in it.
That's right.
So the Fluzone in Australia doesn't have thimerosal.
So the American one does.
Formaldehyde and all other stuff.
It does have formaldehyde.
The funny thing is, so what we got to understand is, so for people out there all over the world, your local region, if you go onto your regulatory body, you might be able to get the product information off, and it will tell you, get the product information if you can, not the consumer medicine information. No. The consumer medicine information is a leaflet in the box. Yeah. Get the product information because it talks about the trials and also talks about the other stuff that they don't need to label that may be in there, such as chicken protein, egg protein, formaldehydes and things like that. The processing aids that end up in the product.
So it depends on where you are, but the American ones have thimerosal in it. Yeah. And, the Australian ones don't. The Australian one in the childhood vaccine, and I might show this up here, this is a paper published, stated Mercury in vaccine from Australian Childhood Immunization Program schedule. So the title pretty much says it all. There is mercury.
So even, this is funny, this is a weird thing, and I want to go and test some of this stuff too, because this is one of the crazy things is, so these big pharma companies that making products for all over the world and mass produce all this sort of stuff, just so happens that when tested, these products that in Australia are labelled to not contain mercury, they tested and found that they do have mercury.
They do have mercury.
That's what that paper was saying.
That's what the study was saying.
So we'll do some further testing, but technically it's not supposed to be. The only childhood vaccine with mercury is hepatitis, which is the one that they're insisting you get jabbed with the moment you're born.
And it's funny because she sent through a fact sheet which actually said that.
Well, the funny thing is, she said there's no thimerosal used in products in Australia. Refer to this fact sheet provided by the Australian government that the fact sheet actually says, yes, there is thimerosal being used.
This is the fact sheet. Yeah. So there is in, but I wasn't even talking, we didn't even mention childhood vaccines during the flu.
No, we're just talking about flu vaccines.
Oh.
So outside of Australia, there's mercury still used in flu vaccine, in particular Fluzone.
Yep.
In Australia, that's not supposed to be at all. But in Australia, the mercury vaccine, the childhood vaccine with mercury is with thimersaul's hepatitis B.
And you said that John's doing some study. He's got an amazing breakthrough announcement that he's going to be coming onto the podcast next week if he makes it. No, I'm kidding.
Wow.
John's going to test all the flu vaccines for hidden mercury or undisclosed mercury and present those next week.
And he lives.
And he lives
going to make it.
Yeah. Murdered.
So flu vaccines, depending on which country you're in, they may or may not have thimerosal. The data sheet that I got was the North American one. It certainly does contain thimerosal as well as formaldehyde.
Now, one of the other things out of that the lovely lady mentioned there that we need to kind of address is the herd immunity aspect. Is that right? So,
Yeah.
And that's a bit I really
what
struggle
was the
with.
lady's name, please?
Hannah?
Hannah.
Oh, Hannah. Yes, here you go.
So the third point was how we sort of had a go at, a 10% effectiveness of the flu vaccine, which I'm not a big fan of. I don't think 10% is great. But
So what we said was the vaccine. You got to explain this better, see.
Yeah.
People can't remember this shit. So it's 10%. So what we said is the flu vaccine was 10% effective according to the studies. But other studies showed that you need to, what is it, 1 in 71?
Yeah,
I
1 in
don't know what
70
percentage
something.
that is.
It
You're
was-
good at percentage.
it
Work
was-
that percentage.
It's
So-
about less than 2%.
Yeah, so otherwise, some said it ranges from 2% to 10%
Yeah.
effective. And for that reason, we didn't feel it would provide any sort of a herd immunity. We've also made reference to that, according to Harvard University, that herd immunity may not be proven or may have been disproven, which is really, I've really struggled to find, to be able to come up with, to fact check that.
Yeah, we need
because
to- need
it's
to get
really
that
weird. We got to do that. But I'm looking at all these papers because they're all saying there's things like 10% effective, 30% effective, or bugger all effective. Yet we should still do it because of herd immunity. It just doesn't make sense. So this is
herd
it's almost like they're
immunity concept is
disproving
what?
it. They're almost like disproving herd immunity, but then the conclusion saying we still think it's a good idea.
Well,
but what is the premise of herd immunity?
Herd immunity is that you vaccinate an entire population so as the vulnerable people in that herd, like in this case the extremely
elderly and the young.
Yep.
don't get
Yeah.
the flu because the flu is basically not in that herd.
Yeah.
However, if it's only 10% effective, and there's no question that's published information, actually, as you correctly pointed out, could be less, but let's say it's 10% at the highest, then that herd, 90% of them could
Are not
get the
protected,
flu,
yeah.
are not protected.
So 10%.
theory
I mean,
is-
I know that you said 10%, and Hannah's questioning. Obviously, she's saying no, it's higher than that.
No,
But
no,
that-
she said
No,
it's
no,
10.
she's saying 10%
Oh,
is
10%.
good.
Oh, she's saying 10% is good.
10% still good, and that
Right.
everyone should be vaccinated. But the Hannah's explanation, which is coming from the vaccination experts in Australia, is that the children and the elderly are not to be vaccinated. The rest of us are, and when we're protected, then they don't need to be vaccinated because we will stop them
That's herd
their
immunity.
exposure.
Right.
So the weaker group doesn't need to be vaccinated. Those susceptible to reactions and that. The strong group are prepared to take the risks to build up an immunity to protect the weaker, more vulnerable people.
Yeah.
That's the concept of herd immunity. Unfortunately, if the vaccination's at such a low rate of efficacy, there's not enough people protected to stop the thing. But the vaccination group believe it is. So,
Right,
and
so
this
10
is
of
the
us
thing.
line up, we get vaccinated. One of us actually gets an immunity to it. 9 of us don't. Therefore, we're all
still-
in contact with
yeah.
that same child.
Yeah,
I know.
and this is where we're
The-
really struggling,
this
trying
is
to
an
disprove. We're trying to. This is where I'm really struggling to understand if herd immunity is real or not, because all these papers are saying it's not, but then in the conclusion they say, but the idea is still good. We still should push for it, or even with this low level, it's still worth doing it for herd immunity.
Oh,
It's really weird.
her bottom line was, well, 10% is better than 0%. And I would argue that
40% is better than 10%.
Yeah, 40% is better than 10%. And if you give a child $1,200
No,
use of vitamin D.
I understand her premise, though. 10%, 1% is better than 0%,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, but it comes at what's the payoff?
Risk versus benefit
That's
ratio
right.
is what we're always looking at.
And also the premise
Look
in
at
which
this, though.
you build the argument on really needs to be deconstructed and looked at, because, and this is the thing I appreciate with experts that are in a certain field, there is a lot of information that they've accepted as fact, which we would probably come from a different viewpoint. And that doesn't mean that there's not some smart people involved in this.
No.
But again, this is where, how would you say, a delineation it's a very difficult situation to breach because typically it's hard to find common ground.
Yes.
But anyway.
This is pretty cool. Like, and we're talking. This is the same. Steve, tell us what you found here.
Sure.
Because this is like the same style of studies.
Yep.
Done on a natural product, as opposed to a pharmaceutical product, and it's telling us the risks and the benefits.
Yeah. And so another study, what they did was the study's called The Preventative Effects of Vitamin D on Seasonal Influenza A, that's a really bad one, in infants, okay? A multi-centre randomised open controlled label study, blah, blah, blah. Basically, it's 40% effective if you give them 1,200 IUs of vitamin D, which is safe for a child. So it's 4 times better. And what my argument is why isn't that being pushed to parents if it's, as the study says, and this is published this year, earlier this year, it's a multi-centre, and why isn't that pushed more than something that's 10% effective?
Well, look, Steve, and I say this not to attack any industry,
No.
whether it be big pharma, big corporation, big oil, big anything, right?
Big natural.
Big natural.
Yeah.
It's true. Anywhere where you have a concentration of power and you have money, the old saying is, he who has the gold makes the rules.
Yes.
I don't care what it is. Anybody is going to protect the monopoly or the status quo if they have it, if they possibly can. If there is money to be made, unfortunately, I believe, and the best thing to do is to attack this as quackery, Steve, and to any proponents of this. And it's easy to find pin-up poster childs of these quacks in the natural industry, just as you can
Tons of them.
with doctors as well too. Let's face it. But unfortunately, they don't get the same shellacking as probably they should. But yes, it's very easy to create a straw man argument around these things. So.
I see it on the TV too. They always pick like someone with a weird accent, dressed like a box of Smarties, up against some doctor with no personality, all very serious, and then they have this one person go, and another person just saying nothing.
Oh well, Steve, you've had it when you were on the
ABC,
on the ABC radio. I mean, you were prepared to debate and discuss and all the rest of it, and they gave the person effectively that you were using the counter argument a couple of minutes to spiel his piece, and what do they give you, Steve?
1 sentence, basically.
One sentence.
And I still won the debate, didn't I?
Yep.
Which was crazy. So, but again, this is the sort of vested.
About that other radio
really
interview, you did
me.
a debate with someone and they just refused to do it.
Oh, I don't mean go out to destroy.
No.
I don't pick on the person. I destroy the argument. And the argument is all about numbers, and that's why I love what Hannah wrote here and her thing. Funny, her point 5, and she says is the most important point, and I'll quote her. I think it is wise to steer the public away from the perception that vaccinating yourself for flu is to protect yourself against developing the flu.
Right.
And that was her most important point.
Okay.
So
she's really focusing on the herd immunity. And she's really focusing on is that her point?
Well, her point is
that
taking the flu vaccine doesn't mean you're protected against the flu.
Right.
But the reason why you do it is to protect the weak and the vulnerable.
Well, yeah.
But I don't know how if you're not protected.
Yeah, I know. If you're only 10% affected, then it's worse than that in other studies. But I'm picking the higher.
And the
10%.
reality is they actually target the elderly and the young for the vaccinations, not the strong and the healthy.
It's problematic because if you compare it to the vitamin D is very safe for kids. The study says in fact kids need vitamin D. It's not like you need a synthetic. You need vitamin D, and if it protects them against the flu by 40%, and the p-value, and Matt loves this, and most people don't know what p-value is, but how confident the results were was p equals 0.0001, which is a huge. That means they're very, very confident of this result because it's a big study, and so I think Hannah would know what that number means, and that's really, really
a lot
important.
of them, to put in perspective, is the smaller the number, the more significant the result is.
Yes.
Most of them accept 0.05
Yeah.
as a good p-value, and this is 0.0001 or something.
Yeah, it's incredibly low, so it's brilliant. So, but I love her point. It's basically the perception that vaccinating yourself for flu is to protect yourself. That's a really thing we've got to steer people away from. Like, I've had my flu shot, I'm fine, I won't get the flu.
Right.
And they do.
Yeah.
90%,
But people would argue, Steve, that it's less severe. And I hear this all the time. People go, oh, well, I've got the flu, but thank goodness I got the flu shot because it's less severe than what it could have been.
Yeah, I've heard that too. But the evidence, is pretty light on that. When I looked for that, I thought, that could be a way out. Because it depends on the strain of flu you get.
Uh-huh.
Like if you're protected against particularly because they only pick about 4.
Yes.
If you're protected against one of those, you could get a less severe one. They try and pick the most 4 severe ones, but you can still get a severe flu that's not one of the 4 because the flu obviously mutates, very, very readily. Has to. I mean,
See, I know as well too, for the sick and the elderly, you don't want these sorts of things, but I always look at it in terms of, that older adage almost, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. I mean, obviously your body builds up, immunity to these things naturally. And if you're naturally powering your immune system with things like zinc and you're removing, refined sugars and you're actually supporting your own body's natural immune system. Again, I understand where Hannah's coming from those that can't, from the elderly and the young and the sick that can't do that sort of stuff, where their immune system is compromised. That's obviously where she's coming from, that position of care.
Yeah, well, the herd immunity would work if the vaccine was a 95% effective, like some of them are.
Sure.
But it's just at 10% that you really, if 1 in 10 people in an office is protected against the flu, there's 9 that could get it.
Yeah.
And that's the scary thing. And also you got to remember with the flu vaccines, there are side effects that are flu-like symptoms.
Now, thanks, Hannah, very much for writing.
Yeah, I love it.
Look, we really appreciate it as well too. Appreciate you coming from a different viewpoint here. Is there anything else in Hannah's email that we should address?
There is. She said, "Oh, we're unlikely to change our minds." I am very happy to change my mind.
Well, I want it to work. But funny thing is with me, I actually the concept of herd immunity, the concept of vaccine, I really want it to work because.
Well, Matt, you're working. Cool, you were working, and I don't know if this project you and John were working with that immunologist,
working on
to find ways to actually, deliver vaccines
without the side effects. And this is funny because, like, when you talk to the scientists that are determined to make a vaccine work, see, you've got to realise all this science done by the scientists that say don't give it to the children, don't give it to the elderly, give it to the strong, and that we want to make this thing, we want to run it. They are 100% dead set, genuinely trying to save the world.
Of course they are.
And same with these vaccination people that get into these things, trying to eradicate diseases and cancers and polios and all these sort of things. They're all in it for the right reasons. It's the people that get in between and manipulate the information. It's when these people are saying, look, we don't want to acknowledge the side effects and that sort of stuff because it's going to create a fear campaign and people won't follow through with our instructions, blah, blah, blah. But when we're talking to a scientist that's trying to develop a vaccine that doesn't have the side effects, and he lists off the side effects, current side effects associated with vaccines that he wants to eradicate, and you're sitting there going, holy shit, that's full on. And then with him saying, and the big problem with that is the injections and the mode of deliveries and all that sort of stuff, and it doesn't follow the laws of nature. We're not interacting with mucosal. It should be delivered to the molt or the gullet, or it should be going through lymph nodes. There's other ways of doing it that primes the immune system without injecting chemicals and crap. And that's where and I'm bloody interested in it because we could actually make some really amazing stuff using our transdermal technology or whatever we're going to do. But the funny thing is it's really bloody hard to do those sort of things with our other code of ethics. For example, we don't do animal studies. So how the bloody hell do we get involved in these things without killing animals? Same thing, we got hit up by someone the other day wanting us to provide data of our specific products, their bioavailability transdermally. So we've got all the data for the individual ingredients that are being done by other companies showing they penetrate through the skin at these different rates and different mechanisms of action for that. We never did one on our finished product, which we could have. We could have had government grants and everything to do it, and could have done it as part of this pharmaceutical trials and that sort of stuff. But the thing is, we would have had to test it on animals and kill them at the end of it, and we don't do it. Now, the fact that all of our ingredients have already been tested on animals by other companies in the past and shown we've got that data we can use, and combining that data together, showing that this is what we suspect will happen, rather than actually going and creating a whole new campaign, testing the same things again and killing a whole heap of other animals just for no real reason.
And can I say as well, too, the theory, the hypothesis that you put forward is that the individual ingredients combined together were synergistic, they should work, so therefore they should have this effect. Well, guess what? The product's been out now for about 4 years, and anecdotally, if you look at the testimonials on social media and all the rest of it, overwhelmingly show that the product works. So
but
to
we
go
only
back
used
then and start killing animals,
I
mean, and it's the same thing. We had the same thing with Cap Zero as well too. We had a huge opportunity to work with a large company to actually roll that product out. And they said, we want to see efficacy, so we want to see this trial. And I took it to Tony and said, yeah, they want to take, was it hamsters or something? They want to take hamsters. They want to create inflammation on this hamster. Then they want to rub this on. And then she says, that sounds horrible. I said, that's not the worst part. I said, then they kill him.
They have to kill him.
She goes,
trial.
I don't care how much money we're going to make out of it. We're not doing it.
Yeah. So it's weird, eh? So like, we kind of get stuck in this weird thing where we got to, we don't want to do that.
Well, I mean, I think Tony would actually be fine if we did it on people that she didn't like.
Yeah.
But, but not animals. I think we all know people like that.
Yeah, I did. I hope we can.
She likes you, Steve. Don't worry.
Yeah, loves me.
Some of the other people in the office might
hate
be
my
in trouble.
guts.
Oh.
Yeah.
Anyway, stop wearing the G-string to work.
Oh,
no,
why?
She's got no problem with cross-dressers, man. It's only you. You're the one who's living in the 60s, 50s, 40s. Anyway.
All right.
I've got the legs for it.
You do, Steve.
I asked Steve-O to write an interpretation guide for adrenal maladaptation. And I asked him to give some talk about these results. And so basically with cortisol, in the morning you're supposed to have a big surge of cortisol. And then it's supposed to drop off, so at night you have none and you go into a deep sleep.
Right.
And that's the way it's supposed to be. Now, Steve-O, when we're trying to interpret the results in the real world, not everyone is that way. Some people are busy in the evenings and not so busy in the mornings or whatever. But anyway, so Steve-O says...
Okay, I got you.
So the interpretation of evening cortisol. So in the evening, there is no reason, none, for your cortisol levels to be high. Because in the evening, what you'll be doing is you'll be coming home, putting your feet up and relaxing while your partner makes you dinner, and you're just relaxing, waiting for your 8 to 10 hours sleep.
Do you get your pipe and slippers too, Steve?
Of course. Yeah. Who doesn't?
So, and then he goes on to say there is absolutely no reason. In fact, your cortisol should be next to none. Like it should be none at night because there is absolutely nothing that you should be worried about. Because you should just be sitting there with your feet up while your partner makes you dinner.
And I said the remote control in one hand. You've got to think which channel to go on. That might stress you a little bit. But
yeah, he did mention that. The only thing you've got to worry about is what channel you're going to watch.
No, the only thing you've got to worry about, did Tony read this?
Yeah,
yes,
you got to read her comment. She mentioned that he may be a male chauvinist pig. And Steve, this is the best. It gets better. It gets better because I actually thought I was going to embarrass Steve. So I printed that off and I went into the room in front of everyone and read this out aloud. This is what Steve-O. And Steve-O's sitting there going, what? And then all these girls are like, oh my God, I'm going to kill you. And then he's going, what? And then he says, I didn't specify whether your partner was male or female.
Exactly.
Well,
I get home and I cook Bex dinner.
The relevance of it is there are other reasons for your cortisol to be high at night. For example, you might be making Steve dinner.
Exactly.
And you might be male. About to cop it.
Could be married to me. That's worse than my stress.
Or you may be doing the laundry and find a G-string. A lady's G-string.
Before you get into that.
So the punchline of that was Steve dresses as a lady.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
So this is the thing. This is the dirt we've discovered. Yeah. Steve got in trouble once.
Yes.
Because
this is years ago, actually.
Because he had a partner. I don't know, male or female, but he had that he can choose. We don't want to specify. It doesn't matter anymore. Steve-O had a partner once that found a lady's G-string in his clothing and assumed he was a cross-dresser not having an affair, which was amazing because she had a great insight. I would have assumed, oh man, he's got a lady's thing and it's someone else's, but no. The immediate assumption by someone that knew him better than I did at the time was that he wears that thing. Now, upon further investigation, it turns out that it was his to wear. He was, in fact, a cross-dresser, but he says it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because it was part of a fun race where I dressed up as a lady.
I did.
But
she
you
found
didn't need the G-string.
Oh, yeah, I know, but I wore
You didn't have to go. This is the thing. This is the point.
He's a method
dress
actor.
up. I have dressed up as a woman multiple times for gender bender parties and that sort of stuff. Never, ever did I consider wearing female underwear underneath.
But if you flash your ass when you're running past, it looks better if you're on a G-string, isn't it? That was my thinking. That was my thinking. What's wrong with that?
That was your thinking.
That was my thinking.
So the boys. So
Your Honour.
So what he's thinking? Let's just analyse it. So what Steve's thinking was,
yes,
if the boys are watching him run past in a skirt, he
Not
needs to
just
flash.
boys,
Or
the
anyone.
girls, yeah.
They're all
Girls
going to
in the team.
appreciate the little flash of the ass in the ladies' undies.
commitment.
There's
Does he
something
do?
in that
Commitment.
But actually,
Now-
talking about the boys,
When
how
they-
do you keep the boys in there?
Oh, you should
Flies
see the
eyes. You
size of
don't
the...
get flies eyes.
You
They
should
just
see the
pick a
size of yours. What
No,
are they,
no,
like
the
peanuts?
size of the
Yeah.
G-string you have to buy for
Oh.
a guy. There's none that are large.
What do you mean?
I had to buy stockings because I wore stockings, and I'm 6'1", and
this gets better.
mini skirt. I got a stretchy one, so I got away with that one.
Yeah, Steve, but just the
Did you have
point
a
is,
nice ensemble,
the point
Steve?
is, you
Bras
didn't have
don't
to wear a G-string. I know
You
you're
wore-
having this
no.
You wore a
testicular
bra as
separation
well.
issue.
I wore a bra. I got
Now, you know what's funny about that? I've had another
You know,
person
there is nothing
recently
wrong
that
with
used
that,
to
though.
work with you.
nothing at all.
I recently got sent a whole heap of old photos
yeah.
from old things.
Yeah,
And I'm talking just parties.
just parties.
Like, like for example, a school party where I happened to be dressed up as a principal.
Yes.
With a cane so I could smack the girls. Steve-O dressed up as a girl, set a trap. I got all these, and then there's the next party. Oh, it's a different party. It's a horror theme. Steve dressed up as a girl.
Yep.
Steve constantly dresses as a girl. Steve is a cross-dresser, everyone. And not only is he cross-dresser, but he will dress up in ladies' clothes and put his feet up while his partner, now he specifically said, I would not specify that it's male or female,
okay.
makes him dinner, and that's why his cortisol's so low.
But Matt, that's fine.
Yeah, no, but it's fucking funny. He dresses like a lady.
I tell you
When
what,
no one's
can I
around.
tell you what the worst part about that whole event was when I dressed up as a girl? Is we had to run 5 kilometres.
Did you get boing boing? Because your nuts would have been going boing the whole time.
That wasn't the worst part. What I realised after not wearing skirts that often, believe it or not, tight skirts, when you run, they ride up.
What does?
Your
G-strings?
skirt
What?
rides up at the back.
Yeah,
I
what do
didn't
you
know
mean?
this when you're running.
Right. What?
It just lifts up at the back, like it rides up your ass.
Then you must run fast. Oh, like a cape.
Glitzery. No, it just lifts. As you move your legs, the skirt just lifts up.
So that's why you felt the need to wear the G-string.
Oh, I did that.
In case of better panty shows.
Because it feels nice.
So I flash the...
Anyway, all I want to say is, Stephen, you can quote me because you're the musician. It's,
I'm a musician.
yeah, well, boys will be girls and girls will be boys.
Yes.
And and
Yes.
you know what? This is the world in which we live. So there is no judgment at all. It's just don't keep it a secret, Steve.
I've shown the photos of my phone to the girls out there. They love me in a skirt.
Absolutely. There is absolutely no judgment on my part. It's
And
just, Matt finds it funny, but I find it liberating.
We raised $32,000 for the Endeavour Foundation that year.
Yeah,
it's
it's awesome, mate.
It was good.
That's great.
Worth it. Oh, we all dressed up bad. I wasn't.
I almost did that once.
you know
So
someone-
they said to me, someone asked me to do a fun run.
Yeah.
And I said, there's nothing, it just doesn't sound fun.
Well, yeah,
and
those
then they
two
said
things
it's for
don't go
handicapped
together.
children. And I said, actually, I might win this. I'm in.
Well, the Endeavour Foundation is for disabled children, actually. Yeah.
Is that why you went in? You thought you were in with a chance
Well,
of
we
winning that
were
one?
Team Endeavour. We had a couple of the special kids on our team
Oh,
that ran
cool.
with us. It was a really cool event. You run from Brisbane out through to Toowoomba, Warwick, and then back to Brisbane. It's a 500
That's
kilometre run.
stupid.
It's called the Endeavour 500.
500 Ks.
Yeah, it's a long way.
Yeah, that sounds like the Young Endeavour boat race when they found Australia. That's a long bloody way.
It's running 500 Ks is a long way. We did it as a
Yes,
relay.
it is.
So you do 5K segments,
Yeah.
and that's and then you do like a criterium where you all get together and it's a big event. That's
man.
when you dress as girls.
If I did that, I would need
one
to
of our-
be. I would end up being
One-
part of the Endeavour.
You know why? You know
Foundation,
why I
and I'd be that
ran so
broken.
fast? I ran so fast because one of the guys in our team wore a Borat outfit, and he was ahead of me, and I just had to pass him. I just had to pass him.
You wanted to get in front of that guy.
What's a
I
Borat
just-
exit? What's a Borat?
A Borat bikini. Where
Oh,
you-
mankini.
Mankini, yeah, that's it.
So hang on a minute.
So you just had a little one,
So
He was worse dressed than I was.
but you wanted to get in front of
you
him.
want to get in front of him.
I had to get it.
That's what John said the other day. He goes, just let me get in front of this guy.
I was
It's like,
just-
that's
I
not
was just
unusual.
looking at this
But then,
guy.
did you back up once you got there?
Of course it will. I was wearing a skirt.
Well,
What
he's-
else?
but he was hitching your skirt up.
That guy was reaching around. What?
I just ran
There's
that
no
race.
problem at all with that,
was-
Steve-O.
It was very cool.
But
wearing
just
a
think of the
skirt when you
children, Steve. Think of the children.
Was it a mankini or he just got his G-string
ran.
over his shoulders?
He had a mankini. He had a fluorescent lime coloured.
And that's all he was wearing.
That's all he was
But
wearing.
what about the children?
Oh, the children suffered that weekend.
This is an Endeavour race, Steve.
Yeah.
So not only are you a dodgy bastard, that a cross-dresser,
Yeah.
And there's
chauvinist
AA,
pig,
there's nothing wrong
but
with-
you're
yeah,
also
chauvinist
doing
pig's not
really
good.
weird stuff instead of in front of special needs people,
Oh, it was terrible.
and making them run 500 Ks.
It was a relay, so we all just tag team. You run around at the bush there. But it's the middle of November. It's stinking hot, and it's really hot out there. A lot of sweat going on.
Oh,
you know.
stop.
Oh, those poor children. That's all I can think of.
Yeah, I know.
Well, they weren't so poor after we raised $32,000 for
Oh,
them.
nice, Steve.
Got to get that in.
Another
a few
good
times.
segue there.
Yes.
Endeavour Foundation is a good cause.
It
That
is.
is a great cause.
Great cause.
And Steve, go and give him a plug.
The Endeavour 500 race, it was fantastic, but the Endeavour Foundation is a great cause, so give. And I think they've done away with the races now. But
I bet they bloody have.
Yeah.
Can you imagine
Strangely,
mail
the
they got?
following year.
Yeah, they never did it again. They just
Don't know why.
there was guys. There was a team of ballerinas that were all guys. So there was worse dressed than me.
weird, eh?
I tell you, I wasn't. I just blended in with the crowd.
Actually, you know what? It's not so much anymore, Matt. You're way behind the times.
Aren't I?
He's
That's
living in
something.
the 50s. You're living in the 60s.
Yeah, it's what
Get
you
with
do
now.
to get the attention, get the crowds out, and more donations. It's
Oh no, man! No one wants to see my fly's eyes running nowhere.
it was pretty embarrassing. It was pretty.
Bloody best.
But
man.
it was everyone was dressed up, and we just it was a fun.
Anyway,
Anyway.
let's move on to something else.
All right. Well, let me finish off with this little story anyway. So,
Oh yes,
for
that's
people
right.
that are,
Story.
wow.
I'm going to create the vision so I can
Look,
start.
I have
thinking again.
I have 3 fans, Matt. Unlike your millions.
I
but
need 3 fans because no fucking getting aircon to work in my room. Sorry.
Anyway, playing football last Friday night, playing the best game I think I've ever played on a hat trick, scored a couple.
Oh,
Ripper Steve actually playing really well.
Ripper Steve.
2 minutes to go into the box and get taken out by a slide tackle. My feet ended up where my head should be, shoulder straight into the ground, dislocated shoulder, and it looks like I've also got a crack in that socket as well too. It was. I just want to say a special thank you to a few people that helped me out a lot. The paramedics that got there, mind you, they took an hour to get there.
Oh, it's funny though.
wow.
So let me get hang on. I want to get the story right. Oh, because I've got to create more visual imagery
Yeah.
out of that.
Yep.
So this is the Christian League. isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. So these are all guys that have been kicked out of every other league, and they've been forgiven and allowed to go into this league.
Some of these guys have got knuckle ducters in
Oh,
their
these
socks.
guys are
Really?
lethal.
Oh.
This is like the Mafia League.
Oh, that'd be
Anyway,
a good
so he's
league.
I
in
got
this.
into a fight
so
a
he's
few weeks ago as well too with a guy. All I did was
What is it? D grade over 40s Christian League.
actually.
Jeez.
Excuse me.
Sorry, C grade.
No.
Oh,
Anyway, playing soccer.
no, hang on.
Boys.
Answer my
What
question.
league was it?
What leg?
No, league.
We're second division.
Right.
Oh, second division.
Yeah,
Over 40s Christian League.
Yeah,
and
even
then
though we finished third last
So
year,
these
we
guys
should be second.
have all got issues. They all hate each other. Every time he comes in, he says, "This guy wants to fight me. This guy's punching." So then Jeff, he scored one Bringer, beats 2 guys. He cuts back inside. He curls it around. I've already heard the story. Curls it around the goalkeeper into the corner. The first goal. Next one up higher than all the other 60-year-old midgets. Jeff just jumps up, bush.
It was
Just
magnificent.
nails his
I
head,
nailed
off his
over
head
these
into the
5'3"
corner.
defenders.
And these
cool.
guys are jumping like this. And Jeff's like, whoosh. That's his second goal. Then the next one, he's streaking down the sideline. Some angry Christian just comes flying through. Just takes him out. He's just going, screw this guy. I wanted to fight him the other week. Everyone made me feel bad. And also,
I don't know if it's quite like that.
takes him out. Legs end up in there.
Yeah,
face
literally, it was
first,
180
head
degrees
into the ground.
crease up. Literally, if I had have rotated a little bit more, I reckon I would have snapped my neck. Like it was that bad. Because I was
Wouldn't look good on
pretty much
video.
all running.
I wish I'd seen. I wish I'd gone.
So anyway, hit the shoulder, cracked it. So they went to the hospital. So it took me an hour to get the paramedics. By the way, they were brilliant. Straight on the whistle, which was thank God, because I could not move. I could not even get my shoulders off the ground. So I laid on the wet grass exactly where I fell for an hour.
Cold.
Oh, mate, I was hot and cold, and then all of a sudden shaking like no tomorrow as well too. Right?
With
So-
your arm down here.
Oh, mate, it was not fun. Anyway, so they give us the whistle, then hit me 6 times with pethidine because I wasn't touching the side. Like
Really?
6 times.
Did you spew?
So, no.
Oh,
No.
I
Anyway,
do.
so 6 hours wait there, and they go, yeah, we've taken an X-ray, you're dismissed. I said, what about popping my shoulder back? I was, look, please, God, someone put my shoulder back in. Nobody would put my shoulder
He's
back
at
in.
hospital 6 hours. No one. They all said, no, you've got to have surgery. They weren't. What's the word? Put a dislocated shoulder. They would not put
They
it
would
back
not put it
in.
back in.
Dislocated?
So
Really?
anyway, rang Mark the next day. This is a bit of an exaggeration. I think I was there about 4 hours, but anyway, it was. Anyway, so ring Mark Pickford from Pickford for Chiropractic.
Yeah.
He wasn't working, but I went down to his place. He's got a little table there. He put it back in for me, and he goes, right, just sit on this bench here, Jeff. And I said, right, what should I expect? He goes, look, don't worry. If you pass out, have a little nap, and we'll see you when you come back around. I said, hang on a minute, why am I going to pass out? And he said, quite frankly, the pain. This is going to be painful. I'm like, all right. Anyway, he put it back in. I didn't pass out. Immediately felt sick. Had to lie down, and I had the most incredible adrenaline rush I've actually ever experienced in my life. I was literally just about jumping off the floor, because I was, so much adrenaline, obviously from the pain. Anyway, the other person I have to thank very much is Gail from
Our Force
Resonance. Anyway, at Clayfield, so she also looked after me a little bit as well too. But
hang on. You got free treatments. Give them a plug on the podcast, didn't you?
No, you know what? It's Rachel Hustler's. You know Jared Hustler. You know Jared Hustler.
Don't you know who I think I am?
Do you know Jared Hustler?
Yes.
So his wife Rachel said I was not allowed to pay. I was going to give him a plug anyway. So she's a strong arm to her mum into treating me, and they're not paying. I feel like an absolute cheapskate. It's
so you
horrible.
should just be given better. And you couldn't even remember a name.
Here you go,
Gail Force.
Send him some products.
I can't remember
Gail
her
Force,
name.
the boat.
No, Gail at Bioresidence at Clayfield. Anyway, so thank you to those people there. Thank you to the awesome staff at the in the hospital too. They were nice people. They just didn't know what to do.
And thanks for the angry midget playing right back.
Bloody hell. It's an angry people.
It's an angry league he plays. Every week he comes in, this little bloke looked like Friar Tuck, tried to beat me up.
This guy, I'm 6'3".
Yeah.
This guy was probably 5'8", and just in my face. Like,
Really?
he got red carded because he kept trying to have a crack at me.
Yeah.
Really?
Because I tackled him.
This is
legally.
Christian
What's his
league, turn the
Wednesday
other
night
cheek
league
business.
or
Friday night.
Friday night.
Trying to relive the glory days.
Yes.
It's I do this for stress.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah, so now I'm blooming crippled. Can't even use my right arm.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, Matt, you'll fix it. You've already given us some protocols
Yeah,
on
you'll
how
be
to heal the
fine.
bone.
Tuned athlete for you know it.
Yep.
He wasn't before, though.
Oh, shit. You're
Just had to have a go after I had a go at my
listen here, you
G-string.
cross-dressing.
you cross-dressing chauvinist weirdo pig.
Exactly.
It's big on Steve Day today, isn't it?
I can't believe the stuff he said about your missus. You're married now. You got to tone that down.
That's not what
You
she
only
said.
ever used to say
Yeah.
that stuff behind their back. Now you're out there in the public.
Jeez, I'm getting messages left, right, and centre now. Steve's at
Righto,
work.
mate.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
I'm at work too.
Actually, he's not working today.
Hey? She's not working today.
No, not working
I know,
today.
but that's what I said. But I am, babe.
Babe. Oh, fuck, that's disgusting.
Yeah, it is. It's horrible.
I didn't even mean to swear then, but that was like, instead of going,
Alrighty. Well, we've got we've done the
We've wrecked it
FAQ.
again.
Completely smashed it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
And
no, thank you.
we'll be back next week.
All right.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Get him a body bag.
Yeah. Hey.
Save the leg.
Hey. Points or no points, you dead meat.